Hello? Jordan, you didn't finish Resident Evil month. I didn't finish Resident Evil month. Maybe you should finish Resident Evil month. Should I? You should. Ooh. Hello everyone, I'm Jordan. I'm back from the dead. And a long time ago, I promised I would make a video called the Top 10 Resident Evil Monsters. That's a pretty good idea, actually. Maybe I will make a Top 10 Resident Evil Monsters. And well, it's been about 6 or 7 months, so I think it's time. Ooh, jump scare Kirby, I'm gonna fucking kill you. What do you want? What do I have to do? I hate you.
The Crimson Heads from Resident Evil 1. The, remake. Oh yes, who can forget the first time they ever encountered these handsome devils? The Crimson Heads from the Resident Evil remake on the Nintendo GameCube are a pretty ingenious idea. Maybe one of the most clever, well thought out monsters in the whole series. Back when I made my video about the Resident Evil remake a couple months ago, I said the Crimson Heads may just be the scariest monsters in the whole series. And I won't lie, they probably scare me more than any other creature on this list. They're fast, they're crazy, they're rabid and monstrous. And when they're coming after you, they make some of the freakiest noises you'll ever hear in your life. So, how do I explain how the Crimson Heads work? Well, okay. Basically, in Resident Evil, there are zombies. And basically, in Resident Evil, you can kill zombies. But if you kill zombies, here's the thing. There might just be consequences. If you don't blow a zombie's head off when you first kill it or come back with kerosene to burn its body up and finish the job, the zombie won't exactly go away. No, it'll just keep lying there, and lying there, motionless for hours. And eventually, when the moment comes, right when you're least expecting it, it'll get up again. Crimson Heads are basically super zombies. They're bloody red evil psychopaths that have come back from the dead. And now, they're even harder to kill. They move faster, they bite harder. They'll even attack other zombies sometimes, because Crimson Heads don't give a shit. So I guess at this point, you might be wondering, if the Crimson Heads are so damn scary, why didn't I put them higher on the list? Why are they only at number 10? Well, I think I'm judging this list of monsters by design. I want to put the coolest looking monsters at the top of the list, not the coolest in programming. The Crimson Heads are scary. They're very scary. But they aren't necessarily that unique of a monster. I mean, they're just zombies, with claws, and an angry red face. There are better monsters to talk about, in my opinion. So, for what it's worth, the Crimson Heads are only at number 10. Deal with it.
Oh, and you know what's way scarier than a Crimson Head? 2 Crimson Heads.
Oh god! Oh! Oh! Not okay! This is not okay! Run, Chris! Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god! Wait, what? The doorknob is broken. You can't pass through. Fuck you, Umbrella! Salazar from Resident Evil 4.
I was starting to wonder when you might notice us.
Boss Salazar, aren't you the best character in all Resident Evil history, dumb? You and your squeaky little midget voice, and your big, tall, weird-looking bodyguards.
The parasites, las plagas, are slaves to my will. I have absolute control.
Well, I really don't give a damn. Rain or shine, you're going down.
You know, I make fun of Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield a lot, but I think Leon is probably the king of corny dialogue.
I've been expecting you, my brethrens.
No thanks, bro.
Oh yes, I let our miserable insects out for some exercise down in the sewer.
Thanks. That should keep me company, 'cause boredom kills me.
Alright, yeah, I know. Salazar is a really annoying character. He's cheesy, he's dumb, he's yappy, and he never fucking shuts up. And I know, when you finally get to fight him in Resident Evil 4, the boss battle isn't even that hard. In fact, it's way too easy. It's kind of a joke. But God, when he transforms, don't you even for a second try to tell me he is not a cool monster. So, Ramon Salazar is basically a giant thing sticking out of a wall, and he's hands down one of the most awesome looking monsters I've ever seen in a video game. He kinda reminds me of the Bed of Chaos from Dark Souls, another really dumb boss battle, but a cool design nonetheless. Salazar as a monster is basically composed of 4 things: a giant head with a big buggy eyeball, 2 long snaky tentacles, and a white slimy gooey core, where Salazar himself is nestled, like a gross conjoined fetus.
Monsters. Guess after this, there'll be one less to worry about.
One of my favorite things about this boss is, like a lot of other classic video game bosses, it'll talk to you while you fight it.
That tickle! I want you to suffer just like Ashley.
I really love it when video game bosses say things like, "It'll take more than that to kill me," or "Any last words before you burn in hell?" It's really a shame Salazar is such an easy boss. If you have a rocket launcher, you can actually kill him in just one simple shot. And really, the only scary thing he does is eat you whole if you stand completely still, which is actually quite beautiful to watch. Poor Leon. What a shame. The Ooze from Resident Evil Revelations.
So, Resident Evil Revelations was an okay game. Kind of.
Yeah, anyone who's been watching my videos for a really long time knows I had really mixed feelings toward Resident Evil Revelations. After the critical disappointment of Resident Evil 6, or at least the lack thereof, Revelations was a game that tried to go back to Resident Evil's survival horror roots. And to me, it only half succeeded. Half of the game was scary, half of it was not. Half of the game was clever and fun to play, and half of it was not. Like Resi 6, this game seemed a bit confused and divided. Like it couldn't really decide if it wanted to be a creepy horror game or a fast-paced action game. And I feel the gameplay suffered for it quite a bit, especially those good horror bits. But despite all this, there was one thing I really loved about Revelations. One thing I really, really, unconditionally loved. Sea monsters. The setting of Revelations all took place on a boat, a ghost ship called the Queen Zenobia, and I freaking loved that setting. See, the ocean is something I'm completely obsessed with. I could read about the ocean for hours and hours and never get sick of it no matter what. The underwater depths just fascinate me. They fascinate me to no end, especially the things that live down there. And this game gave me so much to love. All the monsters you encounter in Revelations are ocean-themed. They're all grotesque, slimy-looking fish people. And they're absolutely delicious. There's so many cool monsters in Revelations, I can't even handle it. You've got big, fat, lurching globules of blubber, shell-faced mutants with organic crossbow arms, angry, flopping little fishy fishes, lurking lurk things that lurk in the watery lurk waters, and, the monster from Amnesia. With suckers coming out of its face. 100 fucking points. The Cerberus, from practically every game in the series. Okay, so Resident Evil might just be the dumbest horror game franchise in the entire world. Like, just the dumbest ever.
How about going down to check by yourself? I have a rope here.
Oh, do you? Well, then I'll try to go down using the rope.
But if one thing can be said for Resident Evil, it may have been the first thing to ever really popularize the idea of zombie dogs. That's what the Cerberus are. Zombified puppy dogs. And they're always Doberman dogs for some reason. What's up with that? Like, is there seriously no other breed of dog in the entire Resident Evil universe? Is that just the way things are there? I mean, come on. Where are the zombie pit bulls and the zombie Pomeranians? Well, anyway, the Cerberus are basically responsible for most of the original game's jump scares. They would always jump in out of nowhere, breaking windows, running around in circles, and then tackling you to the ground to ravenously eat your face off. It was always hard to deal with the Cerberus. They weren't like the zombies or any of the bigger, slower moving monsters in the games. They were small and agile, hard to handle and hard to shoot. It might be a weird subject to touch upon, but honestly, I think Resident Evil is the only game series that's ever succeeded in making me afraid of dogs. A lot of horror games try to have dog enemies or wolf enemies, and sometimes they're pretty awesome. But they never strike panic and terror into my gut the way the zombie dogs do. Another funny thing about the dogs is that, well, they're pretty much the cause of the whole freaking storyline of the first Resident Evil. And I never really got that.
There are only 3 STARS members left now. Captain Wesker, Barry, and myself. We don't know where Chris is.
Okay, wait. So you're all trapped in this big spooky mansion because you're scared of the dogs outside.
Jill, no. You don't want to go back out there.
Why? Why not? Because there are dogs outside? So you'd rather be in here, in this big spooky mansion, where there are killer sharks, mutant snakes, giant spiders, hunters, Lisa Trevor's chimera zombies, and Crimson Head zombies, and you're scared to go outside just because of a few little fucking dogs? Why? Can you tell me why? Can you let me into your little world? Jill? Barry? Maybe if we eliminate this plot hole, we can stop the whole series from being so eternally bloody stupid. The Earwig Bat from Resident Evil 5. Yeah, I know this thing probably has a name and everything, but come on. It's an earwig bat. It's like an earwig, and it's also a bat. From hell. So this is one of the creatures I put on the list almost solely for its design. I don't really have much to say about it, but I think this thing is just so cool looking. I mean, just look at it. It looks like a freaking bloodthirsty demon from hell. It's got 4 wings, it's got 2 ears, it's got the mouth of a warthog, and it's got a big, fat, gross, slimy earwig butt. What's not to love? The earwig bat is this monster that shows up pretty much out of nowhere in the midst of Resi 5. Chris and Sheva are just walking along through the desert in the middle of the game, when suddenly, out of nowhere, bats. And then a bigger bat. So I know in the past I said I didn't like Resident Evil 5, and I don't like Resident Evil 5. But like I also said before, it is a fun game. It's not a good Resident Evil game, and it's certainly not a good follow-up to the delicious masterpiece of Resi 4, but it's a semi-decent game overall. It's got good music, fun gameplay, beautiful graphics, and most importantly, awesome monsters. This bat thing is tasty. I love it. Sure, it may not be as gigantic as some of the other big monsters in the game, like that crazy massive spider boss thing, or that giant tentacled Ricardo Irving thing. But to me, size doesn't matter. The earwig bat is a badass. It just has a perfect design. In some ways, it actually kind of reminds me of Alexia's final form from Resident Evil Code Veronica. Damn, maybe I should have put her on the list instead. Oh god. Okay, see, here's the thing about Code Veronica. Last time, when I made the top 10 Resident Evil songs, a lot of people were complaining that I gave Code Veronica the shaft. And I guess that's true. That list really did deserve more Code Veronica songs. And maybe this list deserves Code Veronica monsters. I don't know, I guess the reason I've neglected the game so much is because, well, I didn't grow up with it. I didn't even play Code Veronica until I was like 20 years old. And even then, the game didn't leave much of a lasting impression on me. I actually tend to remember the game's silly characters more than the game itself.
You're just a rat in a cage anyway. I'll be sure to keep you entertained before I dispose of you.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. One day you'll forgive me. Or you won't. The Hunters and the Lickers. A tie between them both. Okay, before we start with this one, I'm just gonna say right now, I like the Hunters way more than the Lickers. And no, it's not just because I like the first Resident Evil more than the second. I like them both, but the Lickers always look kinda cheesy to me. I don't know why, I guess it's just subjective horror. Something about their long tongues and their big, dumb, stupid brains sticking out of their heads. They just look goofy to me, especially in the movies. I'm Milla Jovovich, and I just broke through a stained glass window on a fucking motorcycle. Well, that's one way to kill a licker. So the Hunters and the Lickers are basically like the strong, big, deadly, dangerous monsters that you meet secondarily in the game. They're the monsters really meant to scare the shit out of you, to make you feel intimidated, challenged, and almost helpless. You can't fight these monsters without a much bigger gun. Otherwise, they'll get the best of you. The Hunters were encountered first. They showed up in the mansion, about halfway through Resident Evil 1, and the way they're presented in that game is absolutely terrifying. The remake included.
It's come for you.
The Hunters are basically these big, muscular reptiles with beady little eyes and huge-ass claws. They can run, they can leap around, and they squawk like... Now the Lickers are basically the Hunters of the second game. The Lickers are more slimy and amphibious looking, with long tongues that can wrap around you and... lick. Like the Hunters, the Lickers also have ingenious presentation. The first time you even see a Licker, you're just walking through the police station, and you only see it in the background for a split second. Did you see it? Yeah. Joy. While I certainly don't like the Lickers as much as the Hunters, I feel they still deserve a place on the list. They're an iconic monster, maybe one of the most lingering, well-known creatures in the series. They've shown up in multiple games since, just like the Hunters. And I'll admit, both monsters have stuck with me since the very beginning. So, yeah, everyone wins, including Barry. Barry wins too.
Yeah, perhaps that was the most important part.
William Birkin, the final boss of Resident Evil 2. Now, for all of you who've been wanting me to put any of the freaky mutated final bosses on this list, like Lord Sadler, Albert Wesker, the Metamorphosis, or Jack Norman, well, this monster, right here, was the one that did it first, and I think he's the best. William Birkin, the mad scientist from Resident Evil 2.
Doctor, we're here to collect a G-Virus sample.
Sorry, but I won't just hand over my life's work.
You wanna know why William Birkin is the best bloody monster ever? Let me tell you why. I'll tell you the story. So, at the end of Resi 2, after a bunch of wonderfully weird, cheesy dialogue...
What happened? There was this incident involving zombies in a mansion.
Too bad.
William Birkin injects himself with the G-Virus, which begins to, of course, turn him into a hideous monster. When you first encounter him, he resembles a man, just slightly mutated, bloody, and muscular. He makes monstrous noises, and then his arms start to grow. He twitches, cringes, and moans. And oh my god, he just gets more and more beautiful every second. The next time you see him, he begins to grow even more. His fingers grow longer, his muscles get larger, and at one point, his head literally gets sucked into his chest. And then he grows a second head. As you start to fight Birkin, you can still see his face slowly getting absorbed into the middle of his body, crying out for help, screaming in agony. And holy shit, for the PS1, that's fucking detailed. And guess what? It's not even the end. There's more. As you continue fighting him, Birkin eventually falls to the ground motionless, and at that point, his body truly loses control. He pants, he jerks, and he shifts, and then, finally, he starts to become a real Lovecraftian abomination. Now that is a Resident Evil monster. William Birkin is one of the most disgusting, beastly, impressively detailed monsters in early video game history. And he's a final boss that's hard to forget. Given the epicness of this ending, and the disturbing, frightful way Birkin grows and transforms, it's really no surprise he's lingered this long throughout the series. I mean, seriously, what Resident Evil game now doesn't have a gruesome, changing mutant monstrosity at the end to serve as the final boss? It's William Birkin. What else can I say? I have nothing else to say. JK, I have plenty else to say. There's 3 other fucking monsters on this list. Learn to count. The Leech Man from Resident Evil 0.
So, about a half a year ago, I made a Resident Evil 0 review with Mr. James Catakaris. And ever since then, I've been saying I would put the Leech Man near the very top of this list. So here he is.
I have to admit, I was a bit cruel to Resident Evil 0 in that review. I think the video Caddy and I did turned out great, and it was pretty fun and hilarious, but there were a few mistakes made during it that I wish I could fix. In the video, most of what I said about the game was negative, and most of what Caddy said about the game was positive. So in the end, when the video was finished, it kinda seemed like I hated Resident Evil 0. But I don't. I like 0, just as much as Caddy does. We both feel kind of the same way about it. Resident Evil 0, to me, is a memorable game with a lot of cool ideas. And also, sadly, a lot of flaws. 0 could have been much better than it was. It had a lot of gameplay issues, and a lot of repetitive mechanics that really got on my nerves. And while it is beautiful and atmospheric, I don't think it's anywhere near as fantastic as the game that came before it. But hey, that doesn't stop me from enjoying it at all. I grew up with this game, just like the Resi remake, and I know it pretty much inside and out. And you know what else I know? The Leech Man is fucking terrifying. So, this thing is actually called a leech zombie, and there are technically more than one of them. But I don't care. I've always called him the Leech Man. The Leech Man is basically one of the strongest enemies dealt with in Resident Evil 0. A creature made entirely of leeches, who walks around, shapeshifts, and wriggles about weirdly in every direction. By far, the scariest thing about this guy is the way he moves. I don't know about you guys, but to me, one of the scariest things about monsters, especially in video games, is the way they move. The way they might walk, writhe, or drag themselves through the darkness, either creeping at a slow, gradual speed, or running at you unexpectedly like a maniac. Both of which the Leech Man does. To me, movement is one of the best ways to make a monster scary. And scary is what the Leech Man is. I mean, just the idea of him alone. A spooky monster man made of leeches. That's pretty original. Oh, and I also love how the music in the game goes whenever he's around. To me, the Leech Man is one of the most creative, bizarre, and beautifully animated creatures in the whole series. There is of course a big mutated William Birkin version of him at the end, too, and it's a wonderfully horrific thing to observe. But of course, nothing in this game is more horrific than the dialogue. Always the dialogue.
We'll see which one of us is gonna die!
Sometimes I wonder why I'm doing Resident Evil month. Sometimes I wonder.
The Regeneradors from Resident Evil 4. Because no shit. Oh my god, Resident Evil 4. You know, now that I think about it, I've never really given my opinion on Resident Evil 4. My full opinion. But honestly, what can I even say about it? Resident Evil 4 is the best game in the series. Yeah, the best. None of the others are better. Seriously though, I know the remake may be my favorite one, and I do think it's the coolest artistically, and probably the best horror-wise, but nothing comes close to the sheer perfection of number 4. Resident Evil 4 was a game that tried to please everyone. And the weird thing? It actually did please everyone. Like, how often does that happen? Resi 4 not only succeeded in being scary, fun, addicting, action-packed, lengthy, and epic, but it also succeeded in being stylistically fitting all at the same time. It managed to have a personality, while still being innovative, still being fun to play, still being scary, and somehow still feeling like Resident Evil. That's the weird thing about this game. Essentially, it was the last good Resident Evil. Or at least, the last one everyone seemed to agree was good. And why is that exactly? Why hasn't there been a good Resi game since? Is it because Resi 4 was too perfect? Was it too hard to top? Well, maybe. Some fans say that's the reason. But in my opinion, it's because of something much simpler. Something much simpler. Survival horror. Capcom cannot, for the love of itself, maintain a relationship with survival horror. You know, the thing that made Resident Evil Resident Evil. I mean, all they need to do, all they've ever needed to do, is make a good game that feels like Resident Evil. A game that's not half-assed, a game that's not desperate, and a game that's not lazy. And with 4, Capcom did that. They proved they could balance action and horror seamlessly, if they really wanted to. Case in point, the Regeneradors. At one point, near the very end of Resi 4, you come across a creepy underground laboratory, full of dead bodies and slimy abandoned genetic experiments. While passing through one of the rooms, you catch a glimpse of something. And of course, a few seconds later, that something starts coming after you. These, ladies and gentlemen, are the Regeneradors. Big, white, tall, wiggling, twitching beasts with beady little eyes, long, lanky arms, and, well, scariness. As the name implies, the Regeneradors can regenerate their limbs at will. They're hard to kill, because they don't really die, and the only way to efficiently dispose of them is with an item that you don't even pick up till later on. Oh, by the way, sorry if I'm repeating a lot of the same footage. There are like hardly any clips of them in the game. Remember when I was talking about monsters that move weird? Well, the Regeneradors, they move weird. They bite, they punch, they wobble, they jitter. Oh, and they also do this thing where they play dead, laying motionless on the ground, and then they suddenly leap at you, like a fucking frog. So why did I put the Regeneradors so high on the list? Why are they all the way up at number 2? Well, this might sound a little weird, but basically, I think the Regeneradors are the epitome of Resident Evil. They are the only moment, the best moment, where everything great about the entire series came together at the same time to form something perfect. The Regenerators are Resident Evil. They're everything good, everything memorable about the franchise. The third-person gameplay of Resi 4, the invincible intensity of Resi 3, the monster action of Resi 2, the slow, subtle horror of Resi 1. The Regenerators, to me, are the finest moment in the franchise, because they're the best example of how Resident Evil really was capable of evolving. They're proof that Resident Evil could easily do action and horror at the exact same time. No need for compromise. And seeing how almost everyone seems to agree the Regenerators were fucking horrifying, and not to mention the scariest moment in the whole game, the best freaking game in the whole series, yeah, these guys deserve to be here. And now before we move on, some honorable mentions. The plant zombies from Resi 2. I think they're cool. The chimeras from Resi 1. Anything that crawls on the ceiling is terrifying and evil. Del Lago from Resi 4. He's a lake monster. A salamander, I think. And hey, salamanders are cool. I also always thought the Bandersnatch from Code Veronica was pretty cool. And that one woman from Resi 6. As much as I hate Resi 6, she was freaky. Oh, and hey, what about Resident Evil Outbreak? You know what Resident Evil Outbreak has? I'll tell you what it has. Zombie elephants. Yeah, zombie fucking elephants. Chew on that. Anyway, let's move on. Number 1. What do you think is at number 1? It's not that interesting.
Yeah, it's Lisa Trevor. Sorry.
Yep, that's right. This list started with the Resident Evil remake, and it's gonna end with the Resident Evil remake. Yeah, shut up. I know. I'm a fanboy. I like this game too much, and I never shut up about it. I'm sorry. But you know what? This monster right here, Lisa, she's on another level than any of the monsters on this list. There's a reason I really do consider her the best monster they've ever designed. And if I had to explain why, I would only have to use one word: subtlety. Yes, that word is very overused. I know, especially on YouTube. But with Lisa, I mean it quite literally. Lisa is subtle, astonishingly subtle. For Resident Evil, you only see this monster 3 times. 3 times throughout the whole game. And you usually only see her for a split second, just long enough to scream and run away. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the reason I like her. Lisa Trevor is a monster that exists only to creep you out. She's just this hideous, deformed, wobbling thing creeping around the mansion. And she can't be killed. Literally, you can't kill her. You just have to run away anytime she appears. She's like Pyramid Head, only Capcom didn't feel the need to market her to death. This monster wasn't shown off. It wasn't advertised, milked, or proudly celebrated any time after the game came out. Instead, it's just a little monster hidden in the dark, hidden in 3 little dark corners of this one game. And that's awesome.
Hello?
What about Nemesis?
Caddy?
Where is Nemesis, Jordan? Why didn't you talk about Nemesis?
Oh. I don't know. I don't really like Nemesis.
What? You don't like Nemesis? How could you not like Nemesis?
I like Resident Evil 3, but Nemesis is dumb. He looks like Morpheus from The Matrix, mixed with a giant angry potato or something. Caddy? Caddy? Hey, Caddy, here's an idea. Why don't you do a guest pick and talk about Nemesis? Caddy.
Okay.
Yeah, Lisa Trevor is definitely one of my favorites too, but Nemesis, whoa, he was the original badass unkillable monster. And monster is the only word you can use to describe him. The way that the game is named after him and the way that you see many really fucking daunting and horrid images of him before you encounter him was a risky decision on Capcom's part, but one that I think worked to great effect. Because after all of that not so subtle build up at all, throughout the entire intro of the game, you are just waiting for him to appear. You know that he will appear at some point somewhere, but you just don't know how or when. You have no idea at all, but he will appear. And when he does, he literally just appears right in front of you, kills one of your team members who abandoned you in RE1, so thank God for Nemesis, quietly growls out his primary target, and then spends the rest of the whole game hunting you down. And if you couldn't stand waiting for him to appear in the intro, holy hell, that means you will give up on RE3 with how tense it gets sometimes. Nemesis jumps through windows, stalks you down, carries a rocket launcher, forces you to make quick decisions in a time limit, and is basically one of the most daunting things in Resident Evil history. Oh sure, he does react to your bullets sometimes, and you can get him to stay down, but it's only temporary. He'll come back multiple times, and if you aren't quick and clever or primed and ready with tons of fucking ammo, he will end you, just like he did with all of your other team members. Oh, and if you do decide to fight him, you will fight him 12 times before his final boss. And when you get to his final boss, wow, what the fuck am I even looking at right now? Yes, in the last few encounters with him, in true Resident Evil fashion, the virus inside Nemesis doesn't quite agree with him anymore and begins aggressively mutating him, which also means he gets more insane to avoid in the last few times that you see him. It's just, I just can't think of any other thing in gaming history that deserves the term Nemesis more so than, well, Nemesis. And please, can we hear that horrific catchphrase one last time? Stars.
And that is why Nemesis is going to get you.
Daddy's scared of Nemesis. Resident Evil month end. Hello everyone, and thank you guys for watching the top 10 Resident Evil monsters. This was the longest video I've ever done. Holy shit, I'm so glad it's finished. Right now, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank my top supporters on Patreon. WanderGirl108, Jose Garcia, Kira Dude, Nathan Stapleton, Xantippe Pink, Delta Delis, Noah Vilgrain, Twinblade Mel, Huzelos, and Psycho Amanda. Did I pronounce all those right? I think I pronounced them right. Maybe I didn't. Also, I'd like to thank Amanda Johnson for changing her name to Psycho Amanda. Now I get to say Psycho Amanda at the end of every video. Psycho Amanda! Yes, that should be the name of a video game. Shit.